What's up, everybody? Marvel Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. Today we are looking at Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 21. Today's issue's title is Hunted, and we have Kraven the Hunter going up against Spider-Man for the first time ever. So, how is this going to end here? Well, we're going to have to find out as we dive on into today's issue, and we recall how Spider-Man had basically defeated Dr. Octopus last issue, and we saw that also Justin Hammer also had a heart attack in his limousine, and so now the media is covering everything. We got Kraven; he's being recorded here on camera for his TV show, and here we go, a big encounter here. Kraven the Hunter and Spider-Man. What is going to happen here? And as we see here, Kraven says, "Our time has come, insect. Our battle is now." And so, what is going to happen here? We see that Spider-Man realizes that, yes, Justin Hammer is dead, and now he has to deal with Kraven the Hunter. And he's like, "Hey, listen, I'm going to rip the door off. Can you grab the girl, but try not to, what are you doing?" And then Kraven says, "We will do battle." And so we see here that Kraven is not willing to help Spider-Man. He launches, he's going to then tackle Spider-Man. Spider-Man dives out of the way. We see Kraven tries to land one punch, misses, tries another, misses again. Spider-Man connects with a huge punch right here to Kraven the Hunter here. And Kraven is sent careening right into his bus here. Spider-Man looks at Kraven, and Kraven is knocked out cold. So that is pretty much the easiest fight Spider-Man has probably ever been in. Kraven was no match for Spider-Man here. So awesome stuff. We see here that Kraven is a whole lot different than the Kraven from the other universe, the original universe, as he really doesn't have any superpowers. He's just a guy that likes to hunt. And so we see here that Spider-Man's like, "I told him not to. I told him to stop it. All you all saw." We saw his, and we see Kraven's agent say, "Kraven," and he's just like, "Sleepy." And then Spider-Man says, "Huh, I thought he had superpowers or something. Showbiz phony." And so, yeah, everybody thought that Kraven would be a big match for Spider-Man. Spider-Man yanks off the roof of the limousine and is going to then save this woman. This is all being reported on the news. And we see here that the woman who is in charge of the whole, filming crew and stuff, they start just clapping. Everybody starts clapping. She says, "You tell me you got it." And they're like, "Shh." See, everybody starts clapping here. They're clapping for Spider-Man. So this is the first time Spider-Man is actually getting some praise for his heroics here. And we see here that Spider-Man's like, "Okay, yeah, thanks. Anybody headed back towards Manhattan? I kind of need a ride." She says, "That was amazing." Spider-Man says, "Not really. Two people died." And then she says, "Did you know Justin Hammer?" He said, "No." So they're wanting to question Spider-Man. Spider-Man's like, "I gotta go." And so she's like, "Wait." He's like, "Well, it's just that no one knows anything about you. Maybe if you talked with us for a second, we are on live air right now." And then Spider-Man's like, "We are?" And so he comes back down and he's finally going to answer some questions that everybody is asking, like, "Who are you? And are you a villain or are you a superhero?" And so we see here that Spider-Man's finally going to give some answers here. We see Mary Jane is watching from home. She knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And he says, "Well, it's no big conspiracy or anything. I just want to do what I can for people. But I have family and friends, and I don't want to, put their lives in danger just because they know me. I want to protect them, so yeah, I wear a mask." And then he says, "It's pretty simple, really, but people might have a hard time trusting someone dressed like this. Well, I have a hard time trusting people who wear those hats with a beer can on each side. So listen, I know it's corny, but the outfit means something to me, and yeah." So again, Spider-Man is answering these questions here. And he says, "Because a guy a whole lot smarter than any of us once told me that with great power comes great responsibility. And that's not just for people with powers like me. I think it goes for everybody. And so we see here that he ends by saying, "So I'm just going to live my life that way, and everything else is noise." Spider-Man swings off, and we see that Spider-Man is definitely going to get some praise here. We see that then Kraven and his allies are rounded up by the police. He's being arrested for hunting down a human being, basically threatening the life of Spider-Man. So Kraven the Hunter and his gang are arrested, and they're going to jail. We see all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Shield shows up. Agent Carter with the rest of her agents are wondering where the heck did Spider-Man go off to. We have to find him. Also, we need to pick up Dr. Octopus. So they collect Dr. Octopus. They're going to bring him back to Shield here. As we recall, he was in that medical facility at Shield. She said, we see Sharon Carter say, "Hi, who's the officer in charge?" The guy says, "I am, ma'am." She says, "Well, we'll take care of this one." And so we see here that Sharon Carter is going to round up Dr. Octopus here and bring him back to S.H.I.E.L.D. and put him under surveillance here. And we see here that Sharon Carter wants all of the news organizations to leave the premise here so that there won't be any problems. So Peter Parker comes back. I mean, it is late. It's probably like 3 in the morning. And guess who is waiting for him? It is none other than Aunt May, and she is pissed, as we can see right here. Look at her face. And basically, Peter Parker's, has no excuse here. I mean, he was out, being Spider-Man, but he can't explain that to Aunt May here. So he comes up with an excuse saying, I was at the library. Well, that's not going to fly because we see that Mary Jane says that, or really he said he was at the Daily Bugle. It just so happens that he hasn't been to the Daily Bugle all week for his job. And on top of that, we see that Mary Jane tried to cover for him by saying that he was at the library. Well, that didn't fly because we know for certain that Mary Jane was lying here, as we see here that Aunt May called Mary Jane's parents here asking where Mary Jane was at. Peter Parker's first excuse wasn't just the Daily Bugle. He said he was hanging out with Mary Jane. Well, that doesn't add up here to the story. So Aunt May thinks that Peter Parker is lying. She knows that Peter Parker has been out for a long time, and he has scratches on his arm here as well, as we can see. As she says, "Is that a bruise?" And he says, and Aunt May says, "Where were you?" Peter Parker says, "No, I fell at school. I got this in gym, those ropes Aunt May says, "Tell me the truth, Peter. Where were you?" Peter says, "Okay, all right. Okay, I was Mary Jane." And this is where she's going to say, "I don't care if you respect me or not, young man, but as long as you live in this house, you will respect the rules of this house." He said, "No, I told you." This is where it gets real. Aunt May says, "Mary's house is the first place I called." And she pounds the desk here, or the table. And she says, "Do you think I'm stupid? Mary was home all night, but boy, she was sure trying to cover your hide. She said you were at the library, so which was it, Peter? Were you at work at the library or at Mary Jane's? Which stupid, insulting lie do you want to stick with?" And we see here that basically Aunt May is going to ground Peter Parker. He can't go out of the house. He can only go to school, as we're going to soon find out here. And she's going to call the school as well. She says, "No more Mary Jane, no more gigglethons in the basement." And she says, "You go to school and you come home from school, a straight beeline to and from, and I will be calling your principal and your job to inform them of this as well." Peter's like, "Come on." And she's like, "Yeah, come on. And if you can't figure out how to do this, I will call the cops on you myself. Is that understood?" Peter says, "Yes, ma'am." So then Aunt May says, "Now get out of my sight until you can figure out how to tell the truth." Peter Parker is now headed towards his room, slams the door, puts down his backpack, turns on the television. The media is praising Peter Parker, or not Peter Parker, but Spider-Man. And finally, Spider-Man is getting some recognition as he says, "Finally, big time superhero, and I'm grounded." So back at S.H.I.E.L.D. now, Dr. Octopus is put under 24-hour surveillance, and he's muttering to himself saying, "Spiders, Spider-Man powers of a Spider-Man." And they're like, "What is he mumbling about?" And I said, "I have no idea." And so they're like, "Hey, you know," and Sharon Carter says, "I think I'm going to just get drunk for the night." And the guy's like, "Cool." He said, "Can I come with?" And she says, "Yeah, sure." And so they basically leave the premise here. And as they leave, you know, Dr. Octopus is still muttering to himself as Spider-Man. Little spider on his shirt. Spider power, Spider-Man with spider. Oh no, no, hello. I know who he is. And this is where he starts muttering, Parker. His name is Parker. So now we have to worry. Dr. Octopus knows the identity of Spider-Man. So how is that going to play into next issue? We'll have to find out. Will Dr. Octopus reveal the secret identity of Spider-Man? Also, we're going to see the return of the Green Goblin next issue. We have a lot going on, so we'll be looking at issue number 22 up next. But until then, keep reading comics.